Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to my channel once again. Um, it's actually wanted to talk about this a couple hours ago, but then it was too early, and I felt like this might not be something worth talking about. And now it's 1 a.m. It's probably late enough for people to make mistakes. Maybe that's why I'm doing this video. But I do feel that I have something to say on this subject. It's quite important. Maybe it's good for me to remember later what I have thought about on this topic. So, what is our mentality against Pips player, and why do we care about this question at all? Right. So, obviously, a lot of us inverted players, like typical young, exciting players, both wing loopers, inverted loopers, want to play that game because that's what got us to table tennis in the first place. The speed, the spin, the reactions, the footwork, the kill shots. It's all pretty awesome, man, and fast paced, right? But then there's like everything in this world. There are two sides, and the other side of the coin in table tennis is the pips players. So, like, pretty much by definition, they go the other way. They don't. When you give them a top spin, they almost never give you back a top spin. And you give them speed, a lot of times they take away a lot of speed. Um, so basically, all your training kind of become useless against them because they don't come back the way you expect them to. Um, and a lot of uh, people lose to this kind of players because the ball just doesn't behave nearly similar to how they have been accustomed to the sport, and that's how they lose. And the reason this bothers me and it's worth talking about is that in ping pong, a lot of people place their ego on the outcome of a match, right? When a pips player beats someone, a lot of them actually think they are better than the other player. They will say, I play a smarter game, I control the ball better, I understand your spin and you don't understand my spin, or I'm just more experienced, I'm more tactical, I'm smarter, or I'm just more skillful. All of that is just really fucking annoying. Now, I'm not saying that's not true at all. In some cases, it's possible that the pips player has even more skills than the inverted player, or more understanding of the game, more experience, more tactics, more strategies, or just simply better. There are cases like that. But the point to be made here is that a lot of times that's not the case. Um, Given the same amount of time of training, the pips player actually always beats the inverted player up to a certain rating. So if you are an inverted player and you are under 2100, chances are someone who practiced the same amount as you using pips will beat you 9 out of 10 times. Okay? That's how it is. I'm gonna explain why. And you probably already know, but I'm gonna go through it anyway. Um, the reason why it's under 2100 is that by the time you're 2200, your footwork is pretty well developed and your looping ability is a lot better. So the changes in in spin placement, location, trajectory, um, or just surprising effects on the ball. Uh, when you're 2200, you can react to it fast enough that even if you somehow got surprised, you still are able to uh, adjust to it and still win. But under 2200, your chance of doing that is slim to none. Over 2200, some people still can't handle it, but generally they can handle it a lot better. And so why? So come back to the previous point. Why would a pips player train as much as you do beat you 9 out of 10 times when you're using inverted both wing looping? Well, it's because well, I already mentioned it, right? When you're only 2100, your ability to read spin is still not quite there. You're very familiar with the basic stuff. There's stupid tutorials, tell you Like every time you go to a ping pong channel or ping pong video that teaches you how to deal with pips, they always tell you these stupid obvious stuff. I don't need you to tell me that stupid obvious stuff. Everybody knows a long pips reverses spin. I want you to actually tell me when long pips does not reverse spin, right? How about that? Can anybody fucking tell me that? Right? Because that would be a useful fucking video. I've never seen that video ever anywhere. All they tell you is that, oh, top spin becomes bottom spin becomes top spin, and you have to remember what you gave your opponent. Well, that's like a basic of basics. Whoever play a long pips player like more than once know this. So why would I need you to tell me this piece of little knowledge to deal with long pips, right? I just need to play someone once and I already know all that stuff. Why do I need to watch a video for that? Well, am I just like a person who never does real things and just watch videos? That's all I do all day. If that's the case, then yeah, I may want to watch that video. You telling me long pips reverses fucking spin. So same reasoning, right? I mean, actually out there, what's really confusing about short pips and like medium pips, and actually there's a kind of pips that's even shorter than short pips, and that's the one that Mima Ito uses. But people just call that short pips anyway. But in Chinese, that's actually a whole different type of pips. So in case you don't know, there are actually 5 types of weird pips, right? So we have the famous long pips, and then we have famous short pips, that Liu Guoliang uses, a lot of fast attacking, and He Ziwen uses. And then you have anti-spin, which you see from time to time from really amateur players, but sometimes good amateur players who can get up to 2200 level with this anti-spin thing. Very slippery surface. It reverses the spin just like long pips, except that it chops like a long pips as well. I think the only difference of that is you can never generate any spin with anti-spin, right? With long pips, you can generate some spin, not a lot, but you could generate some spin. But with this anti-spin, because the surface is so slippery, you can never generate any spin, okay? So the 4th type is what? Medium pips, right? Medium pips is the famous Chinese brand. I forgot what the brand is, but the model number of that rubber is 563. 563. That's in Mandarin. 563. 563. It's like between short pips and long pips. It's a medium pips. So a lot of times it behaves like a long pips, but you can actually attack with it a lot better than long pips. You can smash with this guy, and the pips will bounce so hard that it has a very, it goes out really fast. So you can attack with that. You can smash with that like a short pips, but you can also defend with it like a long pips, in the sense that you just touch the ball when people loop, and the ball will stay short and low and reverses the spin, right? But it's like just a middle between short pips and long pips, in many ways, right? So so we have long pips, short pips, medium pips, anti-spin, long pips, short pips, anti-spin, medium pips, and finally you have that shorter than short pips Mima Ito type, right? In Chinese it's Sanggao. In English is they just call it short pips, but it's shorter than short pips, right? Let's call it SSP, right? Shorter than short pips, SSP. So that's Mima Ito uses that. The main usage of this type of pips is that you can punch with it very effectively like Mima Ito. You can punch with it so good, it's ridiculous. I've played a 2200 player with this style. He can basically punch anything that's not heavy bottom spin. Anything. If you have heavy bottom spin, then they cannot punch really hard. They have to kind of rub a little bit, give a little bit of friction. And if there's another type that it doesn't deal with very well, it's the very heavy top spin. They cannot punch down heavy top spin easily either. But so against heavy top spin, they have to just block with a touch shot. You see sometimes maybe Ito does that. Some people loop a spinny loop. She just kind of touches it, and the ball kind of floats over. It doesn't really give you top spin back or bottom spin. It just floats over like a no spin. So that would be a weak return in that pips domain, but it's only vulnerable to two types of spin: heavy bottom spin and heavy top spin. So if you're unable to generate strong spin, then you are kind of fucked against this kind of pips. So anyway, so that's an overview. So it's 10 minutes in the video. We can take a little short break by talking about some random stuff for like 20 seconds, and we'll come right back to this, right? So a little summary, right? We talked about why we want to care about this kind of players because of the stupid thinkings that they usually think about. They think they're better than you, when in effect it's because of what they use. It's because of the equipment, right? Of course, if he's like 2200 level and you are like 1800, of course, in general, in almost everything, he's better than you. But if you're like 2100 and he's 2200, he might not be better than you at all. A lot of times you actually are better than him in understanding of ping pong, understanding of serves, understanding of spin, understanding of rhythm, momentum, all that stuff. You are better than him. But the reason he's 100 points above you, meaning he beats you most of the time, is because here's a big point, right? It takes like I think about 30% effort from those players, or 30 to 50, right? Let's call it 40%. I think that's about right. It takes them 40% of the effort that you need as an inverted both wing looper in order to achieve the same effects of usually a change in spin or placement or speed or spin, things like that. 40%. So what I'm saying is that if someone loops to you in the top spin and you want to give them a bottom spin as an inverted player, what do you have to do, right? You have to chop it, right? You have to like a chop block. You know how hard chop blocks are, right? It's really hard. Actually, it's almost impossible. If someone gives you a heavy topspin loop or just a fast topspin loop and you want to chop it down, you have to, most of the time, you have to do it from a distance. And even then, because you're using inverted, chopping is very hard, unless it's a forehand, in which it's easier because you have a bigger motion to chop down. Like, most choppers, they can do a forehand inverted chop, but you still need a distance, right? Close distance, you can't chop at all. It's just way too hard. You have to do a side chop. Side chop against the top spin is still like almost close to impossible. Like Marlon, when you see Marlon does that backhand chop block, that's because the other person loops a side spin to him. That it goes like this way, curves into him. That's why he chop blocks. It's a side spin mostly. That's why he chop blocks. If it's mostly a top spin to his backhand, there's no way he can chop block. So chop block is very difficult for inverted players, and actual chopping, you have to be away from the table. For those pips players, they don't need to do any of that. They don't need to do the side motion. They don't need to stand back from the table. They just put the racket right there. Just put it right there, and that's all they need to do. Just put it. They don't even need to assert any force. Just put the fucking racket there, touches the ball, and the whole thing gets reversed and take off some pace, right? So taking off the pace is one of the most challenging things. Because all of a sudden you give them 100% power, the ball comes back with like 40% power. Normally, when you give 100%, if the other person is using inverted, about 80% comes back, even if the person doesn't add any force. You just put the racket at 80%. But instead of 80%, the pips players will come back 40%, right? So I'm not saying all pips are the same, but that's roughly the feeling, right? From all the experience I've played against them, it's like it's around there, right? I mean, some pips gives you a little bit more, some pips a little less. Let me close the door. Make sure my son doesn't get awakened up by me. So we talked about how easy it is for them, right? It's much less effort, right? 40%. But so maybe I should get to the main point of this I'm trying to make. So for the longest time, I despised this kind of player, because most of these kind of players, the reason they use these in the first place is because they are not sporty. And they're not sporty because of a limited number of reasons, right? One main reason is because they cannot be sporty. Means they're either old, or they're just really weak physically and they don't want to train up, or they're just a smart asses, right? They're just smart asses. They feel like, oh, this is so much fun. You can just change shit up so easily with this, right? In any case, the only reason they want to use that is because they have no physicality. They're not fit enough to run around, to put force into the loop, to actually learn the mechanics, right? In further looping, it takes a long time to get an effective stroke. Everybody knows how to loop, but if you want to loop strong, you want to loop quickly, you want to be able to pull off a loop from everywhere in any situation. That is not easy at all. It takes years of practice, right? So if you don't want to go through all of that grilling training, then yeah, pips is your choice. You can get a lot of you can get a lot of results with pips like very quickly. All you need to do, like if you're a long pips player, all you need to do is like when people loop you, you put your racket right there, and then you immediately 1900, no questions asked. And if you know how to like turn a bottom spin to top spin effectively, you're already 2000, no questions asked, right? I mean, assuming of course you know the basics like smashing, and then the basics, you have 1800 basics. All you need to do when people attack, just put your pips right there. So um okay, back to the main point. So why do we care about so the people who use these weird rubbers are the ones who cannot be physical. They have no choice but to use this. So in the Chinese circle, in America, actually, you don't see a lot of players use that, because in America, you don't even have that many table tennis player anyway, right? It's a minority sport, and it's really hard to get respect, right? It's the complexity of table tennis is, I dare say, a lot more than tennis. I'm sure I might offend some people. I don't care. But in terms of the rotation spin, we all know table tennis is a lot more than tennis, okay? And in table tennis, you have nets and edges, right? And these are things that tennis don't have. Well, tennis, there's and then table tennis, you get a lot more exchanges per second, okay? You can hit like 3, 4 exchanges in 1 second. In tennis, you have to wait the ball to fly over, come back, run a bunch, go over there, hit with all your might, and yell out and grow now. There's a lot more exchanges going on, right? And then and then also in table tennis, the rubber, there's like quite a lot of difference, right? You got this anti-spin, even for inverted rubbers. There's still different kinds, right? In tennis, yeah, sure, you can say you have different strings, right? They're different, but they're like, how different can they be? There's not a lot of room for the ball to react differently to like a bunch of plastic strings, right? I mean, because when the friction is less, there's just less thing to. Sure, you change your racket to some space shuttle metal. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what these freaking entitled rich trust fund babies, spend their money on their racket about. You can use gold for all I know, and then spend like thousands of dollars, maintain a stupid tennis court with like freshly grown grass, cut every day. It's just such a stupid, luxurious sport. I mean, I respect the sport, but I don't respect the environment that surrounds it. Why in the hell would the prize money for tennis that much more than table tennis? You know, it's even harder to train in table tennis than in tennis. Okay, I mean, people have to start at age of 5, and they have to train like so hard every day. Tennis, give or take. I know some they start much later than 5 years old. Start like, I don't know, 8 or 9. They can still be champion, right? Whatever. These days they're more competitive, but still, come on. It's like golf. Come on, nobody plays golf. You know, nobody plays golf until they can't move anymore, right? I mean, but then these days they're younger golf players because there's so much money in it. And they figure I can just learn this game earlier, get really good, and beat all the old farts and make the money, right? So it makes no sense. But this is America, right? America, it's a lot of stupid people. Okay, the country is pretty stupid, right? I mean, don't you get me started, right? We elected the stupidest person as a president ever, right? His IQ, I guarantee, was less than 100. But anyway, um, so America, we don't even have that many table tennis players already. So we have a lot less American pips players. In the Chinese circle, however, especially the one coming from China, the older generation, there are a lot of them, because when ping pong start getting famous, when Chinese start getting the dominance, That's about 20, 30 years ago. And those guys right now are about 40, 50 years old, right? The ones, who started playing ping pong around 10, now they're 40, 50 years old. So you see a lot of these 40, 50-year-old Chinese players with the weird pips, all kinds of pips. Not only do they use the weird pips, the pips is so worn out you can't see the brand. It's so worn out. Some rubbers fell off, and then when he hits it, it's like there's no way you can know the property. Or they can, on top of that weird pips, they can use some really weird glue. This is fucking ridiculous, right? Uh, uh, and then there's so many types of them. Okay, so but okay, let's just get straight to the point. I hated those players and the ones that think they're better than me for so long. But at the end, you have to think about it this way: they are a very sad group who still try to have some fun with sport, right? Even though they don't exercise the body the way they're supposed to in a sport, meaning running around, hitting the ball, breathing hard. No, they just use that stupid thing and then poke the ball here, poke the ball there. The thing, if they want to use their brain that much, they should just play chess, right? If you're playing table tennis, you want to sweat, right? You want to move around, right? But no, they just want to use that smart ass pips, right? But a lot of the reason I don't hate them anymore is because they're sad. Okay, they're old, they cannot move, right? They can, or they may not be old, but they just cannot move, right? So you don't want to deprive them of the fun of playing table tennis, even though that means they have to use some weird shit, which means it's not really table tennis anymore. But what can I say? I mean, the rules allow it, right? So they can use that, but they can only rule under 2200. So the only payback against these suckers, and I mean in that way, that they are suckers, is that you have to get above 2200. That's when they will have absolutely nothing against you. I mean, they have nothing in their arsenal that can be used against you effectively. You will kill them. I mean, if you're a Pips player and you become like He Ziwen, become like a world class 27, 2800 players, then yeah, I respect that, But I tell you, right, 99.999% of weird Pips player you'll see in your life, in America, are those old farts from back in China who use them only because they can move around, not because they really appreciate the property of that rubber, and they want to train for real. I mean, anyone get to 20 more than 2200 in weird pips is in a way, not a trivial person, and they probably won't attribute their success on their efforts alone. They'll be smart enough to know it's because of their rubber, right? So 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 back to the point is that they are a sad group. They want to exercise. They want to have the illusion of doing sports by playing table tennis, and they don't want to use inverted because if they do, instead of 2100, they would be actually 1900, and they can't live with that because 1900 means getting killed by like so many younger people, older people. Anyone with any skill will beat a 1900, right? I mean, 1900 is no disrespect to those players. I was 1900 for like a couple of years, but 1900 is just like beginning of your serious table tennis journey, right? I mean, anyone who start liking the game is immediately 1800, right? And then you get a little more serious, you are already 1900. So anyone who's a little bit like liking the game a little bit much will beat those old guys if they use inverted. So the ego, they don't want the ego to be bruised, right? The older the person, the more fragile the egos are. It's just you can't hurt an old person like that. You can't tell them that even if they are losers, you can't tell them they're losers because they can't take it. They will find many other ways to like put you down. I mean, trust me. I mean, they live on the earth for 60 years or something, or 55 years. You're telling them they're suckers. They will do whatever they can to belittle you because they feel like you have belittled them, even though all you're doing is tell the truth. But the truth here is not a winner because maybe they're not losers. Maybe there are a small group of them who don't think they're better than you. They just really want to still get in the competitive game of table tennis, and they have no choice but to use pips because, like I said, if they use inverted, they'll get killed, right? So they're a group that that tries to stay relevant, right? And and they cannot stay relevant if they use inverted because they'll be playing beginners, right? So they're sad, so the question becomes, um then what do you do, right? If you play them and they beat you because of the pips, they think they're better than you and you feel like shit. You feel like this guy is so stupid and annoying, right? And just like ignorant, right? They don't know they win because you play us all the time, right? Here's a big point, right? The weird pips guys, they play us inverted players all the time because there's a 85 or 90% of players out there are inverted, right? So they play us all the time, and we only get to play them like, I don't know, very once in a while. Like maybe in a club, depending on some club, right? If you're lucky, you get 20% weird players. If you're in a certain kind of club, maybe you only get like 5% of those players. So take a medium, right? Medium of 5%, 20%. Let's say you get 12%, 13% of those. So 1 out of 7 players are weird, right? So you play 7 guys, only one of them you get to practice against is weird. And don't forget, we have 5 weird pips, okay? We just counted that. So 1 out of 7, if you want to play each kind of weird pips once, you have to play 35 players before you can do that. And and if you're a weird pips player, you can play 35 matches, and 30 of them, on the other hand, 30 of them will be inverted players. So they play us like 7 times more than we play them, and they still tell you that they win because of skill, because they understand it better. So the reason they think they're superior is because of the ego reason I told you. They're old, they cannot handle that, they're not smart. If you're old and you're not smart, then you're pretty much nothing, right? So they have to think they're smart. They have to think they're experienced because that's all they have left. It's the number of years on Earth. Well, that they don't have a lot, but they have experience on Earth, so they cannot say, "Oh, I can't beat." They just can't handle it. They can't handle it. You know, which is why, like, you as a younger person, you have to be the bigger person here, and just let them feel good. But what if there's like really obnoxious type who just really thinks they're better than you when they use pips? You just can't play them anymore. It's that simple, right? I know the solution may sound obvious. Just avoid playing those fuckers. But it's not easy to identify those fuckers. Sometimes you play them a couple of times, you think it's okay, and then you talk to them a couple of times, and then you realize, oh my god, this guy is actually fucking cocky and arrogant and stupid as hell. Then you realize you should not have played him in the beginning, because now in his mind you're just forever not as smart as him. That he's a better player than you are, and that's already too late, because then he will tell his friends, his buddy. I mean, sure, I admire you if you don't care what he says, but you have to care if you live in any kind of community. People gossip, people talk. There's an image you have to live up to. If you become the kind of person, who are silly 2000 pips player can beat you, then people are gonna be, they're not gonna respect your game as much. So you don't want that to happen, right? In any community, you have an image to uphold. If you live in a community and you have a normal job, you don't want people to think you're homeless, right? So there's a certain image you have to keep up. So in here, if you're a great table tennis player, like at 2200 level, you don't want people to go around and say you can't beat a 2100 pips player when all he does is stand there and just poke with his stupid pips, right? Which can happen if you don't play them enough. So right now, I have made a mission to not avoid them, to actually play them as much as I can. But I really have limited exposure. Okay, like in Brooklyn where I live, um, in my club, there's rarely any pips player, and the only pips player I get are long pips, which is like the easiest kind of pips to deal with in my mind, because like that's the easiest to use kind of pips, right? Because all they do is reverse spin and take away pace and turn top spin and the bottom spin. That's what people use on the backhand when they think backhand is hard, right? I mean, I know in professional circles they say the backhand is actually easier than forehand to train. Um, I know the reason, and I agree with it. It's a professional opinion that backhand is easier than forehand, but we're not gonna go there today. But in amateur circles, the backhand is actually a lot harder because we don't know how to train it. A lot of us is doing it wrong or overdoing it. We shouldn't be doing it in a certain way. We should just not overdo backhand. The backhand has limited applications, right? When you try to use backhand outside of its natural zone of usability, then you kind of mess up your overall balance of the game. So that's why people use long pips and weird shit on the backhand to overcome the fact that they don't know how to train the backhand. So um, anyway, so up to this point, have I covered everything? Let's summarize a little bit. So if those weird pips players, you realize they're either arrogant or have any chance of thinking they are above you, that they really literally think they're better than you in table tennis, then just don't play them at all. Just from that point, just don't play them, or just better yet, figure it out first. If actually, and also, um, in a tournament setting, if you know you're gonna play a pips player, and he's like 2100, 2200, and he's an old guy, I I I recommend you don't play him because you're gonna lose points, and you will not get revenge. Trust me. When is the next time you're gonna play this person and win? I mean, it's just not gonna happen, okay? Because first of all, you have to run into the same person in the same event, and then you know that the chance of that is not high, okay? And then he'll go around. He surely will go around and tell people, "Old people have nothing to do but to tell people their accomplishments." That's all they do all day is talk about how great they are. Like, I don't care how little I achieve, but look at this little instance, at this little piece of thing. How great did I do there? I like, like, oh, when I was young, I know this person who know this person who know this person who's a president of some country. Who gives a shit? Come on. Are you that small? I mean, I've hung out with old people enough that I'm really tired of their talk. They're basically asking people to suck up to them, in a very desperate way, and nobody really listens. Everybody just talks, and everybody's just talking about their little accomplishments and hope some other people will reciprocate, in the hopes that they will also get sucked up to as well. This is how pathetic some of these dinners are. When I go there, and I'm just kind of sick of it. Um, Anyway, I mean, old people have their sweet sides, but most of them just are bitter assholes. So gotta know your audience. Know your friends. Choose wisely. Otherwise, you just get a bad taste in your mouth. Right afterwards, you realize, oh my god, so that's what it was. So all these hours I spent with this person, he actually spent it for this reason, not because of friendship or pure discussion of techniques in table tennis or just two friends trying to know each other better. No, all those hours was actually because he wanted to feel good about still being relevant in the society or being powerful, in the hierarchy of things. He just dragged you into his little circle and convinced you he's all that. What in a whole and the whole time he doesn't give a shit about your stories or what you tell him, what you share with him. He's not even the slightest interest to connect with you emotionally. He just gather enough basic information about you to make you feel like you are being heard, that you are a friend, right? I mean, there's so many of those fuckers out there. I mean, the older ones. I mean, most old people actually. I mean, to be honest, if they know what they're doing, most of them don't show their face anymore. And when they do, they show up very humbly, because that's how they should be. If I'm fucking 55, but I can barely move, I come out to play and have fun, and then I'll try to win if I could. If I can't win, I admit, it could be, I'm old now, and it goes without saying, right? You don't have to tell people I'm old, that's why I can't beat you. It's okay. Of course, they also see some young kids, who are assholes who think that they're better than you. They're like the young kid's better than the old person because they think he's better than you, period. Not just because he's younger, right? But that same goes for them, right? If they see asshole young kids, don't play them, right? So, and just figure it out first. Otherwise, you walk in, you play with some asshole, and then if he beats you, he's gonna brag about it. I mean, I promise you. It goes for young kids as well, not just old farts, right? But young kids, they're less likely to brag, at least not for long. But old people, they will brag forever for the rest of their lives. If they beat someone, like if they beat Fan Zhendong or Ma Long when they're like 3 years old or 6 years old, they will talk about it, as long as they live and breathe, they will talk about it. Trust me. I still hear about this shit. Somebody beating Fan Zhendong when they are like together in an elementary school. I'm like, really? What is that supposed to mean? Like I'm supposed to be impressed that like your son or your relative knows him in elementary school and you beat him in ping pong back then before he even started playing. I mean, how is that even relevant to me? Like this is how little they are. Okay, I mean, so just get to know your pick. Walk away. I mean, table tennis is not that simple, right? Very intense game. People like to associate the outcome of the match, to a lot of irrelevant things. So I've talked a lot about from the negative point of view. Maybe it feels like a little bit too much negative energy, but the positive out of all this is actually what I'm trying to do here. Is that how to stay positive against these people, right? If they just want to have fun, not trying to feel like they're above you, if they really understand that they have advantage by using those things, then you can play them, but do not ever let your own ego get involved, because I assure you, if you do, they will let their ego get involved as well, and it won't end well, because you won't be able to beat them all the time until you are literally 200 points above. 100 points above, they will still surprise you, and they will still say you win because you're young and stuff. So unless you're 200 points higher, which is like very hard, right? Those old farts usually are around 2100 or 2200. So you want to beat them convincingly, you have to be above 2300, which is not easy for amateur players like us. So yeah, so figure out who that person is first. If they're if they're weird pips player, before you play them in a tournament. If you want your rating to increase, and you haven't played this pips player before, and he's somewhat good, like anyone with pips over 2000 could be very surprising. They could play out of their mind, become 2200 that day, like 200 points more. So, or maybe just a style mismatch. Somehow you can't deal with his kind of pips. So anyone above 2000, unless you're 200 points above him, don't play him. So the example is, if you're 2150 and there's a 2000 pips player in a tournament, don't play him. You're gonna lose like fucking 40 points, and then you might lose you're gonna lose 40 points, and then he's gonna brag about it everywhere. Oh, I beat a 2150. He's only like 25 years old. And I beat him. I'm so smart. He's just not as smart as me. That's what they're saying, right? It doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth, their own mouth. They just so so avoidance is the best policy, but first understand them. Like whoever, if you could understand that person first, see if it's worth playing, and if you play them, do not ever let ego get involved. You lose, don't say a fucking word. Shake their hand and just leave. They will brag about it, but they will brag about it the least amount possible, because you have given them no reinforcement, no extra energy to talk about it. You will just remain so low key that they don't even want to remember playing against you. So then, even if you lost to them, they will feel very little fun bragging about it against you. So that's the best outcome out of a bad outcome. The bad outcome being you lose to him, right? So anyway, so back to the point where so I mean, I understand and I empathize old people still wanting to stay relevant to sport, and don't want to get the ego bruised. I understand that, but I'm not really. I just can't respect. Like, I can't respect that as a competitive game. I can respect you as a player who enjoys the game, but I cannot respect you as a competitive player. If you're a competitive player, then use inverted stuff like we do. It's the most fun kind of rubber, the most control. You can control anything as long as you have the skill. You can flick, you can drop shot, you can loop. You can You can do all kinds of stuff. But with pips, you are limited. You can only do what the opponent does, in return. You cannot do bottom spin if I give you bottom spin, because it will become top spin, right? If it's a long pips, of course, unless they side chop, which requires skill. So, which a lot of them don't know how to do. So, I digress again. Now, where's my train of thought? Generally, play them for fun, but in tournaments, avoid them unless they are really below you. Then you can play them. If they're 200 below you, you can play them. Otherwise, avoid them. You're gonna lose points, trust me, and they're gonna brag about it. But normally, doing like practice matches, play them as much as you can, and just don't give a shit about winning or losing. As long as they don't go around and talk about stupid shit, play those guys as much as you can, so you can get used to it, right? But more importantly, you train it as hard as you can, so you get above that level. So once you get to 2300, let's say, I would say you would have killed 98% of those pips players out there. Those old farts player. So most of those old farts pips players, they're just using the pips to stay competitive. So and usually they don't actually learn skills anymore. They're just trying to do weird stuff, the little cute stuff here and there to kind of throw you off course. Once they throw you off course, they will use their life experience to really make you feel like you believe them, and you lose confidence, and then you lose the match, right? That's all they do. So once you're above a certain level, like 2300, they will never do that to you again. They just can't, because you don't have to worry about what they do. You can tell how to loop a ball just by looking at the ball after the moment of contact. You don't even have to look carefully at the moment of contact. The ball comes here, you can just watch the ball, and you remember this kind of rubber will generate what kind of spin, and then your feet, your legs will move in the position in time to react to it. Yeah. When you're lower, even if you know what's coming, your body may not react to it, or your body can react to it, but you don't know what the spin is right now. So basically, this is to rise above the chaos, right? To rise above the chaos. By the time you're 2300, you can lose them however you like, because most of them really don't understand shit about spin. They just use the pips repetitively so that they know what effect it will have on the spin. Most of them don't actually know. It's bullshit. You know how many different types of ways you can hit the ball. Can they really keep track of all that? No. They just mostly it's trial and error, muscle memory for them. They don't know shit about it. Like I know a silly long pips player. He's so proud of his pips. So stupid. Anytime he doesn't know how to read a serve, he uses long pips to just poke it. Every time he pokes at it at the same angle, the angle that will maximize his chance of returning the ball. So what that means is that he pokes it at like a 45-degree angle almost every time. So if you serve like heavy bottom spin, he will still eat it to the net. If you serve top spin, he will still pop up like crazy. Like what he hopes is that the ball will not go out of bounds or will not go into the net. And then when the ball comes back, it will be floating, either just so floaty, or it will, because he has a pen holder, when he use that backhand long pips, the ball will flow sideways a little bit. So that kind of takes care of anyone under 2100 would have a trouble looping that shit. And I'm glad I'm above 2100 and I can loop that shit now. So you have the rise above the chaos. The person I'm talking about is he's like a 1900 2000 pips player, but then he could mess up some 2100 sometimes. So you gotta rise above the chaos. Then you can make him feel so little that he will never fuck with you again. He will never talk shit about you in any context. Like in this example, he used to give me trouble, and actually from time to time I even lost to him like a match or two. Like I played maybe like 10 times before, and I lost like 2 matches to him. And I was like a 2050 player, and he's like obviously just about 1900, but like with his pips he can beat many 2000 players sometimes, so which makes him about 2000 honestly. So I was a 2050 player, and losing to him really is sucks, right? Because the only reason I lost is because of his stupid pips. But once I get used to that. I know how long pips behave, how side chop, how it is, right? Bottom spin, long pips will make it become top spin. But if they side chop, it means that he's not using the long pips against the incoming, the axle of the spin. So if the spin is like this, like spinning into you, like spinning into you directly, and your long pips goes face like head on, like 90-degree against the spinning axle, then yeah, that's a reversal. But what if the spin is like this, facing you directly, but you're not doing this, you're doing it like a little bit 45-degree? What that means is that it only reverses half of it, which means that it won't be heavy. Um, well, it will be bottom spin, but if you do a side chop, it actually doesn't reverse as much. It will reverse half because it's 45-degree, and then half of it will become side spin reversal. Because there was no side spin in the beginning, there will be some side spin imparted by the long spin. So you see how complicated this is, right? I mean, can anyone truly on the fly calculate all that and then react to it? Impossible, right? I mean, you'll be lucky if you find someone who can calculate all of that offline when you're not playing. So most of us really just like deal with muscle memory, right? We have to try to remember what happened last time we play against this kind of shot, and then we know how to react to it. Otherwise, we have no chance. I mean, what I do is that I try to analyze the pips so that I know why it reacts a certain way. But at the end of the day, if I want to beat these guys, I have to let my muscle memory remember all the situations. So in order to beat all of them, you need to play all of them, like all of them, like more often. Or you just need to get to 2300, 2400, and then they will have no game against you. I don't see any of those stupid players having more than 2200 level. I've seen like in the past 6 months, I've seen like 10 of them, and none of them is over 2200. Like, but yet they like a lot of them are just 2100, but yet a 2100 pips player can beat a 2250. So, and then they tell people they're 2250, right? So that's really annoying. Anyway, but that's about it. I've gone on for about an hour. That's crazy. Anything else? So just to summarize, rise above them. Just train hard. Don't play them in tournaments. Play them in practice, but only against people who won't talk shit around. Well, just like it's so obvious that you're playing in practice, they will have no mood to talk shit behind you because they know you're just not taking it serious. If they don't like it, then fine, don't practice with me. I'm not gonna be serious with you if you're gonna use that kind of crap. So the moment I get serious with you, with those guys, they will get the satisfaction of beating me. It's just So anyway, so they are set group. There's no reason to try to like out them because the logic is too complicated. Are you gonna tell people that they are a group of sad old people try to stay relevant, who has no physicality and that's why they use that? No, that never comes up in any group because what is that gonna do? It doesn't help the owner of the club because the club needs these old people. Old people are willing to spend money, right? Because they can't bring the money into their coffin, so they spend the money into and then the owner of the club, they needs a group of regular players. Who other than the old people will come all the time? Ping pong is just like a bunch of old people, a bunch of young kids. Like people in the middle are very few, right? Anyone in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. The 40s is conceivable. A lot of 40s, because like they're over their peak of their career, so they want to play something they play when they're younger, or they play something less physical. So by the time they're 40 something, they come back and play. So around like it's a teenager sport and a 40s sport, right? 20s, 30s, kind of out of it. 50s, right? 40s plus, right? So yeah, it doesn't come up in any discussion because it doesn't help the owner of the club. It doesn't help the good. It doesn't help the group either. Whichever group you're in with those kind of players, you bring this up. You're basically telling like a lot of them that they're suckers, right? I mean, you're just gonna make yourself the enemy of the group for no good reason, right? I mean, the only good reason is that you're telling them they're sad, they're pathetic, they can't do anything else. That's why they do this, to stay relevant, to tell people they're still good and shit, right? if you want to just do sport, you can still use inverted. Just don't mind losing. Jeez, you can still move a little. The ones who play good, they don't actually have to move that much. It's just like one step on the right, one step on the left, and you cover the whole table. Just don't go back. Just stay close table. Then you just need a couple side steps. If you can't even do that, why bother doing sport, right? Seriously, just like go to the gym and just like play with the machine. Why do you have to fucking play ping pong, right? So like for me, those guys is a bunch of obstacles, really. Like they serve no purpose. Uh, they don't help you understand the game really, because so many variations of those pips and different glue. They're not helping you. They're really confusing you. And once you rise above, you don't need to care about them. So I think that's the bottom line. And I cannot really like admire any of those players. So unless they're training professionally, like He Ziwen, that's a different story, because they really train. Anyway, it's too late. It's 2 o'clock. I gotta stop. Thanks for listening.